I'm here with my new friend, Natalia. We are very excited to talk to you. We're talking about flow, we're talking about women's health, we're talking about a lot of different issues today. Most of you probably know Natalia from her being a supermodel, no big deal. But she's a philanthropist, she's a mother of 5, and now she's serving on the board of directors for Flow.
It's true.
So, Natalia, how did you wind up here working on Flow?
So actually, after my baby number 5, I decided to be very careful, just to have a little break. And, being very old-fashioned, I asked someone in Russia how to make sure that I protect myself but still feeling comfortable. And someone suggested period tracker, and I'm such a dinosaur, obviously, having 5 kids. Then I never heard of a period tracker before. And I started using Flow because the guys are actually Belarusian, so we're neighboring countries, so that's sort of geographically was the closest period tracker, I guess, to Russia. But actually, it's since I started using it, I really discovered an incredible platform where I've learned so much just in the first 2 days of using it. There are questionnaires that you have to pass, and being a mother of 5 and a woman that should know her body by now, I found that I only got 40% on the questionnaire of things, and there was so much to still discover. There's also, it's much more than the period tracker. Period tracker is just kind of the beginning of it. They really work in preventive medicine. So for all of us women, we sort of go to a doctor when we already have something that is happening to us, but actually Flow, because you input a lot of information manually, and they work with artificial intelligence and neural networks. Depending on the information that you input, they give out suggestions of what might be happening with you before it becomes critical, so you can actually go and check it out with your doctor. Of course, they would never diagnose anything, but they're certainly very precise on suggesting you the right information. And then, of course, if you're trying to avoid pregnancy, or it's something that I learned that actually, there are only 3-4 days a month when you're actually very fertile, and the rest of the time you can, have a pretty much safe sex. And also there are forums for women. Because it's completely anonymous, you can discuss anything completely openly. And what really moved me is how many women wrote, "Oh, I'm not the only one." And really, because we don't talk about health issues, we so often feel that it's something shameful and something not to be discussed. Sometimes even with our best friends, we feel a little uncomfortable to bring this topic up because it's not really fun, and it's very, again, as I said, very personal. But there, in those forums, you feel that it's a completely bully-free space, shame-free space, where you can talk absolutely about anything, your favorite positions, and I don't know, what's happening to your body, or why is this why is this color, what it should be like. And in a way, Flow as well, it's like sign up to the best, imagine, Instagram women health account, but personalized to you. So it's just couldn't be any better. And so I thought we need to take this further. We need to take this conversation, some of the conversations that are happening inside the app, into the real world. And that's when we came up with campaign, Let's Talk About It, period. Because the stigma around women's health and periods is coming in a different shape and form in around the world. If you are in the 6th grade girl in America or in Europe and you're just shy to go and ask for a pad, I mean, why should you go and ask for it in the first place? Sanitary items like I don't know, soap and tissues and the toilet paper are available everywhere, even in the kind of the crappiest deli on your highway, you will find a toilet paper. But even in some sophisticated offices around the world, you wouldn't find pads or tampons. And this is just kind of one of the discrimination, I think, against women that we find here very normal, or taxation. Here in the United States, apart from 10 states, all the other states tax tampons and pads as a luxury items. But when you go to India and Nepal, you will have girls and women separated from their family for the whole duration of their period. So how crazy is this? So we decided to really talk about it. And I went and met the founders and I told them about my vision. And it's funny because I'm the first woman on board of this very female-oriented, obviously, app. You actually, as a man, you can't even you can download it, but you can't even use it. Although they're coming up with a little messenger. So when a woman is having her PMS, then her boyfriend will receive a note saying, like, be nice to her today.
You mentioned this, but I mean, in different places around the world, and here in the United States, girls and women don't have access to pads or tampons or the things that they need to, sanitarily deal with their period. You grew up in poverty in Russia. Did you ever face a time when you didn't have what you needed, or when you had to miss school because you had your period, or anything like that?
Well, I actually remember very well using sometimes toilet paper and just spare cotton that my mom had to to help myself. Yes, there were moments that I couldn't afford it, and I know that a lot of girls, even in UK, facing this problem. But of course, there are 500 million women and girls around the world who do not have access to sanitary items or to safe place where they can look after themselves. Change. Some women in India, they walk a mile to go and reach a toilet in order to actually go to the bathroom or just change the tampon. Well, not the tampon, but probably old grandfather's socks. And 70% of women in India, that's the statistics from UNICEF and World Health Organizations, who die from any kind of reproductive health issues. 70% of them would die from low hygiene.
Those statistics are just unbelievable, and I was going to ask you this later on, but are there any causes that you support or initiatives that you support that we can, visit to give back or donate or help in some way?
Yes, thank you for asking. So before I answer this question, I just want to expand a little bit more on the fact that, us women, well, I was born in Russia, but and I didn't get any sexual education, but a lot of women actually I talked to, even in the United States, they got sexual education, but it's really basics, it's really minimal. They don't talk about your emotional health as a woman when you going through so much of that hormonal change. And I just feel it's so important. Why do we have to discover by ourselves somehow that we have PMS, that we, that our hormone levels would affect us so much in our personal lives? But then, men don't get educated on that as well. So in a way, we are not armed with information and men are not armed with the information. So we kind of, this two opposites that are conflicting at this moment where there is friction, where if we were armed with information, we would resolve it in a very different way. The woman would just say, oh, sorry, it's actually 1 week to go before my period, or because it's actually happening usually not during your period. This is something that I always thought, that I only should be moody when I have my period. But actually, now I realize that it's very common the week before, and I never really understood that. Why am I in such a bad mood? I get in quite bad moods, and luckily my boyfriend is really understanding, but I also have been in relationships when men were less understanding and would be like really criticizing you and like, why are you being so mean? Why are you in such a bad mood? And of course that is just not helping us. Or in the workplace, when a man raises his voice to make a point, then that's okay. He's just trying to make his point. And when a woman does it, it's often like, oh my God, she must be having her period. I'm sure that a lot of you can relate here, my female comrades.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I was going to answer a question, right?
Just if there's anywhere that we can, donate.
Yes. So we, with Flo, we're taking this campaign to India, actually, and the campaign is about interviewing women who have a voice around the world. So I've never interviewed anybody. Yesterday was my first try, and it was really incredibly exciting. I actually love talking to women, and I spoke to a few women like Emily Rytyakovsky, who is a very strong voice when it comes to female empowerment, and she's campaigning a lot about self-expression and sexuality, and the fact that it should be normalized for women to express themselves how they want. And also to Laura Brown, who is the editor-in-chief of InStyle. And I even spoke to this incredible young transgender woman, Ariel, who just did Calvin Klein's show, because I think her point of view is also very important when it comes to young girls shamed in India because they're having, they have their period. And Ariel wants to have children one day, and she understands that she cannot maybe do it in the way that most of women can in the world, but that opinion of her, the fact how precious it is to be able to have your own children with your own reproductive organs, it was really beautiful to talk to her, and I'm sure that her message, now we're going to take these messages from these women to India to hopefully empower these women, but also to try to get the families to think differently. But most importantly, women, so that they, even if one woman, young woman, especially girls, if for one of them the reality will change, that I would find that it would be successful. So in Floor, if you download Floor, we will be giving some of those videos that you can watch, and then you can press a love button, which is a micro donation of $1. And with these funds that we will raise from around the world to support Indian women, we will distribute hygienic products throughout India, so that, because only 12% of women in India have access to hygienic products.
That's amazing. So download the app, press those love buttons. Also, I wanted to ask you about being a mom. You had your first kid when you were 19, is that right? You have 5 children now. You have a huge career, especially when you were very young. How did you manage that? Did you bring your kids on shoots with you? Did you? What did you do?
Yes, there's a lot of pictures of my son Lucas, who's almost 16 now, being backstage at the shows and at the shoots. Yes, he was a pocket child. He traveled with me everywhere. That was really fun, actually. It's amazing to have one child you can sort of bring with you everywhere. Now I have a very big family, so it's a very different situation. I just fly in and out. I flew in yesterday morning at 8:20. I left Paris at 11. I was in New York, and I was all day spent interviewing these women. And today I did few meetings because we're preparing a big event here with Naked Heart Foundation, which is my main charity. And my main work, it's what I now do every day for the last 14 years. I'm very privileged to be a model. I'm incredibly privileged to be able to actually afford not to worry about my life, so I can dedicate my life to some changes in my own country. I do a lot of work in Russia with special needs, actually, but also around the world.
And I imagine, maybe I'm totally wrong, but I imagine that there's a big difference between sort of the glamorous life of modeling, or what we perceive to be the glamorous life of modeling, and then all of this philanthropy work that is really where your heart is. So how do you kind of bridge those two worlds?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's actually what keeps me sane and happy. And my life is so fulfilled because I traveled all throughout Russia with my charity. I've been to Siberia 5 times. I've been to Altai. I've actually discovered my country because of my charity work, and of course all around the world. I work with the most incredible, inspiring people, whether it's a specialist that works with a child with autism somewhere in the middle of Russia, or whether I'm now working with Jeff Koons because he's the art directing our event in New York. So it's really, I think, a lot of those things I couldn't do as a model and as a famous person only. And the most rewarding part of my work is when I actually see the results of it. And we now have 20 schools and 50 kindergartens in Russia for children with special needs. And all those families, they completely gave up on their children. Well, they never gave up on their children, but they gave up on the system that they will never find school. They will never find kindergarten for those kids. And then I meet those parents a few years later. And that moment of us basically crying in each other's arms, because I understand them. My sister was born with very deep autism, and I experienced that absolute hopeless existence of when you just don't know when any of this reality will change for you. For me, it came, of course, very unexpectedly. I don't know what would happen if I didn't become a model to my family, but I know that for a lot of those parents, it's this hopeless situation where they feel that there is no future for their children. And when you give them not only the hope, but a very clear road of their children's life, it's really just the most beautiful thing you can do.
My final question before we turn you over to your audience is just, you do so much for the world and for other people and for your family. How do you take care of yourself? What are some self-care practices that you enjoy?
Well, I keep promising myself every year that I will take care of myself more. I do have time to shave my legs, but that's probably as far as it goes. And self-care. I do have incredible people around me. I have my teams that are taking care of me permanently and making sure that I stay sane, and that I also, of course, I sort of, by default, being a model, I'm spoiled. When I come on a shoot, everybody, I'm a princess, I'm in the middle of, of all this chaos going around me, making sure I'm fine. It's really quite strange, when everybody comes and asks you, would you like some water? Can I get you anything? And then, of course, the most amazing hairdressers do your hair and the makeup, and you wear these princess dresses, and it's a great break from reality for me, and I need it, and it's a wonderful, actually, sort of way to balance it out. Plus, the industry, the fashion industry, is one of the wealthiest industries in the world, and for me, it's to have access to these incredible resources, the brands that I work with. It all supports my charity work, of course. So I'm very, very grateful to all those designers, photographers, stylists, and celebrities, friends, other models. Our community is very strong. We're very, very supportive of each other, and you can do nothing alone, of course.
Well, we're grateful to you for everything that you do. So, your audience.
Hi, thank you for being here. So before you mentioned what an issue the lack of sex education was, what's maybe something you wish you knew when you were, coming of age and discovering all these things kind of on your own?
So much, so much. The most important is I wish I knew that I was precious. I know it probably sounds ridiculous, but I grew up without a father, and I had a father figure in my grandfather, and I loved my grandfather very much. But we kind of, anything like sex and any of those topics are such a taboo in Russia that we never had those conversations. And in a way, I discovered everything by sort of a most persistent guy eventually, getting to me and not letting go ever. And in the end, you just, I think if I knew, if someone was told me, like, you're precious, you are very, very special, you should know that, and you should someone building boundaries around you and barriers around you as a young girl. I mean, my sex experience was not that young. I was almost 17, but still, I still feel it was too young.
Hi, so my question is, since you were talking about doing charity work in India and Russia, what other places across the world are you wanting to bring out do other charity work in with the app?
Yes. Thank you. Actually, with LB, which is a platform that I co-founded and that is sort of aggregator for a lot of those projects, we work in 80 different countries around the world. So we work in Uganda, we work in Ghana, we work in South Africa, we work in India, we work in Australia, we work in England, we work a little bit in US as well. So really around the world, we're just in the beginning. But we already have 45 different charity partners, and we do hope for a successful journey, because what our ambition is to bring technology to charity. We today can imagine a smart home, a smart wardrobe. Technology is really taking over, but when it comes to philanthropy, which is quite a big industry, it's about $700 million industry just in the United States, but it's not. The tech is not there because, in a way, there is no financial gain. Maybe I'm not sure, but we're working on some cool tech product, and so you can download it already. It's live.
We have one more question.
How do you balance your professional and life with children, spending time with them, and does anyone care about them when you're away?
Sure, of course. I do have even two. Well, I have two nannies that rotate, and I have a repetitor, also a tutor. Thank you. Yes, repetitor is in French. I have a tutor for my elder children, who is an incredible guy. It's a guy, and I have 4 boys and 1 girl. So. Guy around, it's just fantastic fun. But the way I balance it myself is, whenever I'm back home, I go straight into my children. I approach motherhood in a way with the same commitment that I do with my charity work or with my professional life, and I try to give all my. Luckily, I'm in a good health, so I'm trying to give 100% of my time to my children when I am available, when I'm there. So, like all other working women, I go to office during the day, and I sometimes when the day is light, I pick up them from school. But most of the time, I come back at 7:30, like my husband, and then we have dinner together with the kids. We catch up on the day. And we play, and they are as busy as us, actually, because after school they have homework, they have piano lessons, and sometimes art lessons, and it's just. And weekends I switch my phone off like a good mom, and I spend time for me, for my boyfriend, for the children, and we enjoy our weekends.
Natalia, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.